Environmental development. The Environmental Development chapter contains requirements intended to make certain that agricultural and environmental practices contribute to a more sustainable production system. These requirements will be discussed under the following topics: managing pests and diseases, managing soils, managing water and wastewater, managing waste, managing biodiversity, and managing genetically modified organisms and greenhouse gas emission. Let's discuss each topic separately. Managing pests and diseases. Managing pests and diseases helps avoid crops being damaged or even destroyed. This section intends to minimize risks from the use of handling of pesticides by encouraging a reduction in the amounts of pesticides used, promoting the use of the least toxic pesticides as economically and technically feasible, and implementing and improving an integrated pest management system. Pest management requirements are applicable to all crops that the organization is certified for, and also to the fields where they are grown. This means that the use of forbidden pesticides on the certified crops, even if not intended for the fair trade market, is not allowed. The intent of all requirements on pesticide use described in the fair trade standards is to control the risk of exposure of farmers and workers to hazardous substances, to prevent accidents, and to avoid long-term risks. The organization is therefore required to enforce certain regulations with regards to the sale or distribution, storage, and handling of agrochemicals. This can be achieved through the following strategies: using minimal amounts of pesticides by adopting Integrated Pest Management (IPM), proper use of pesticides to avoid risks by reducing exposure of people, choice of pesticides used and using chemicals with lower toxicity. It is the responsibility of the organization to ensure that workers follow the requirements. Therefore, the organization has to support workers to comply with all requirements. Some of these requirements to be implemented by the company include: 1. Ensure that spray operators are thoroughly trained, are relieved periodically from spraying through job rotation, rinse all personal protective equipment before removing protective clothing, shower after spraying, undergo medical examinations where necessary. 2. Ensure guidance from an integrated pest management (IPM) expert. 3. Ensure that all workers are aware of the hazards related to pesticides and chemicals. 4. If materials on the red list are used, permission must first be granted through an application for an exception as per the Fair Trade Exception Policy. Managing soils. The goal of good soil management is to meet essential plant needs. If soil is managed in the correct way, it will increase yields. Good practices in the handling of fertilizers can reduce pollution in water sources and the wasting of resources. Improving fertility is a relevant activity to improve sustainability in agriculture. Organizations and workers should ensure the following: 1. Fertilizer application is according to the needs of the crop. 2. Storage of fertilizers ensures no risk of water pollution. 3. Fertilizers and pesticides are stored separately. 4. Identify any land at risk or already eroded and take suitable measures to control erosion. 5. Identify land where ground cover is needed and put a plan in place to establish cover. And 6. implement practices to enhance soil fertility. Managing water and wastewater. To ensure sustainability in agriculture, good management of water is essential. Fair trade standards require the producer to ensure good water practices, taking into account where and how the water is sourced, minimizing the volumes used, recycling water wherever possible, and making sure that any wastewater is not released into the environment without prior treatment. Wastewater management. Wastewater encompasses a wide range of potential contaminants and concentrations. The objective of wastewater management is to reduce the volume and extent of water pollution through certain measures. These measures include capturing water once it is polluted, treating polluted water, and using techniques for returning it into the environment and to safely reuse wastewater. Managing waste. Waste is material that is no longer used or needed or perceived to have no value. There are different types of waste. Organic waste comes from living beings such as plants or animals. Inorganic waste comes from minerals or man-made materials such as plastic water sachets, polythene bags, or paper. Inorganic waste can be non-hazardous or hazardous. Hazardous waste is waste that poses a danger either to the environment or human health or both. For example, empty pesticide bottles and batteries. Waste that is not disposed of in a proper way can form a threat to human beings, animals, and the environment. The company should develop a waste management plan that includes the following: identification of the main types of waste, how to reduce, reuse, and recycle waste, other alternatives of disposing waste. As a last resort, best practice methods of waste collection and disposal. Managing biodiversity. Biodiversity simply means the diversity or variety of plants and animals and other living things in a particular area or region. In practice, biodiversity suggests sustaining the diversity of species in each ecosystem as we plan human activities that affect the use of the land and natural resources. The fair trade requirements linked to biodiversity include, but not limited to: 1. Avoiding negative impacts on protected areas and areas of high conservation value, HCV, inside and outside the farm or production area. High conservation value areas are natural habitats which are of outstanding significance or critical importance due to their high environmental, socio-economic biodiversity or landscape values. 2. Maintaining buffer zones around water bodies, watershed recharge areas, and between production and areas of high conservation value. 3. No collecting or hunting of rare or threatened species is undertaken, and that no alien invasive species is introduced. Managing genetically modified organisms and greenhouse gas emission. Genetically modified organisms, GMOs. A genetically modified organism, GMO, or genetically engineered organism, GEO, is an organism whose genetic material has been altered by receiving genes from different sources with the help of genetic engineering techniques. For example, this can be a new type of crop that is resistant to certain viruses, pesticides, herbicides, or has other characteristics that have been altered through genetic engineering. Genetically modified crops should not be intentionally used on fair trade certified farms because 1. They do not contribute to sustainability in the long run. 2. They increase dependencies on external inputs and discourage an integrated approach in the production system, thus inhibiting resiliency. 3. They may have potential negative impacts on human health and to the environment. 4. They may dominate world food production by a few companies and increase dependence on industrialized nations. Energy and greenhouse gas emissions. Greenhouse gases are gases in the atmosphere that absorb radiation. Greenhouse gases regulate the climate by trapping heat. They also warm the atmosphere of the Earth. This phenomenon is called the greenhouse effect. As the amount of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere increases, there is an increase in temperature that creates a warming effect that is similar to the warming inside a greenhouse, hence the name greenhouse effect. This then leads to a change in the climate and weather patterns. The following human activities, among others, raise the level of the different greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Burning fossil fuels. Certain farming practices and land use changes. Deforestation. Many factories produce long-lasting industrial gases. Population growth. To comply with energy requirements in processing facilities where non-renewable energy is used, your organization should keep records of energy consumption, take measures to use energy more efficiently, and replace non-renewable sources by renewable ones as far as possible. On the other hand, to comply with greenhouse gas emission requirements, organizations are required to research and implement practices to reduce greenhouse gas emission and increase carbon sequestration. Here are some examples of what you can do to sequester carbon or reduce greenhouse gas emission in the atmosphere. Ensure fertile soils stay productive using organic methods and reducing tillage. Perennials, tree crops, and other agroforestry methods keep greater biomass in the cropping system and therefore should be encouraged. Preserve forests and grassland that maintain carbon sinks while protecting watersheds. Revegetate degraded soils and incorporate carbonized biomass. We have come to the end of this session. We have discussed different requirements concerning environmental development. Complying with these requirements contributes to a more sustainable production system.